Mic, check 1 2. It's the Y2K Collector, and GameStop is still pumping out a lot of very clean retro games. I'm going to show you pretty much everything that I got yesterday in the mail from the second order that I placed with them. And honestly, a lot of this is just a really big experiment to see if the games that they have on their website that are rare or more uncommon, if they're going to be authentic and if they're going to come in good condition. And so far, when it comes to their cartridge-based games, they have not let me down. I have a bunch of disc-based games coming, and I know a few of you want to know what the ratios are when it comes to complete in box versus not complete in box. So I'll share that with you as well in future videos. But this morning, we're going to take a look at 5 cartridge-based games that came in, and those include Wario Land for the Game Boy, Pokemon Gold on the Game Boy as well, an extremely clean copy of Pokemon Yellow. I mean, ridiculously clean copy of Pokemon Yellow is crazy. A very good condition, well, not very good, a decent condition of Bomberman 64. And then Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. So these are a few games on their website, and I wouldn't say that all of these games are extremely rare. There are a few of these games that I've seen on their website a few times, right? Yoshi's Island I've been seeing on the website a little bit more frequently. There was a while where you didn't see any of these Pokemon like games, but now they're popping up on the website more often. And then Bomberman 64 isn't one that I see quite often. Now, some of these I think are coming from, stores, but I think all of these games that came in, these all came from their warehouse. Now, when I see like copies of Pokemon Gold that are in decent condition, or even like a copy of Pokemon Yellow that for all intents and purposes, it definitely isn't flawless, but it's definitely authentic, and the cover art though is in like extremely good condition. I'm getting the vibe that these are games that they've just had sitting in their backstock somewhere. And now they're just all of a sudden saying, okay, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and let these games go. Now, I share my perspective on, GameStop, retro video games, the gaming market. And a lot of that perspective is based on my own experiences, what I see happening with retro games online, not just GameStop, but eBay, Mercari. I check social media. I see what's happening in social media. I see what's happening in my local markets. I see what's happening in my local mom and pop shops. And then I also, see what's happening on places like YouTube and things like that, right? So I try to source information as much as I can, but I don't have the macro view of the retro gaming market, right? It's clear that there are differences depending on where you're at in the country. There are some parts of the country where there's plenty of retro. There are a lot of people who are still buying and selling retro. And it may seem like in your immediate area that retro is bigger than ever. There's also other parts of the country where retro is really dry. Like there's no retro games, no one's buying or selling any retro games, and your only hope of finding retro games is if you go on eBay or Mercari or something like that. Because I get a lot of feedback from, some of the viewers who say, well, I can't find a retro game to save my life, and a lot of them say they can't even find them on eBay. I have a lot of subscribers who say that when they go to check eBay for games, there's usually nothing there. But I'm going to share what I've recognized about GameStop and eBay over the last 3 years. When it comes to like eBay and like Mercari and online sites, those sites typically I've seen they get a little bit busier in like the fall going into the winter and then like early spring. And then what happens is people start to do their yard sales again. They go on the road, they go to gaming conventions, and a lot of that inventory gets taken to these in-person meetup events. Now, it doesn't mean that they fall off the site immediately, But as those games are sold, then they start to come down off of the site. I had points, over the first maybe 2-3 months of the year where Mercari for me was dry. eBay for me was dry in terms of what I was looking for, which is another thing, right? The gaming market can seem dry based on what you're looking for. Like if you're looking for a ton of PS4 games, you're not going to think the market is dry. Even if you're looking for PS3 and Xbox 360 games, you'll feel like there's a strong market out there. But if you're looking for like, certain Super Nintendo games, certain Sega Genesis games, original Game Boy games, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, things like that, it might seem dry. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about GameStop though is that like it happens every spring. They do this dump of retro. They did the same thing last year and they did the same thing before. And each year I've been able to capitalize. That's how I've been able to get games like Mega Man X2. I got my copy of Mega Man X2 from GameStop. I've gotten Def Jam Fight for New York from GameStop's website. And they do these dumps. Even before they started the retro initiative, they were doing these massive dumps of retro games, at certain points in the year. And I've seen it happen. It usually happens a lot in the spring, going into the summer. And I've seen it occasionally happen like fall towards the end of the year. And it's never during their promo. Like I've never seen it happen during their promo where unless like they had a game posted up and no one noticed it or bought it and they rolled a promo out and then everybody jumped on the retro side to see what buy two get ones they could find. But I've never seen, one thing I can say here now in 2025 is I have never seen this much quality inventory on GameStop's website before. And that's me just talking over the last 5 years, right? I use the last 5 years as a benchmark because we have not seen a surge like the one we've seen in the last 5 years. A lot of people refer to things that happened in 2016 or 2008 or 2002 or however far back you want to go. But we had never, up to 2020, we had never seen anything like what we saw in 2020. 2020 was the biggest wave of inflation. It was the apex of retro interest that we've seen in the last decade. Primarily because we got caught up in a once in a lifetime event. A pandemic is a once in a lifetime event. So anyone that tries to compare what happened in 2020 as it relates to the pandemic effect on retro to anything that happened prior to, in my opinion, it doesn't equate. There was never a time where everyone was at home at the same time trying to buy games at the same time the way they were in 2020. That's never happened before. So comparing momentary, cycles where there's a peaked interest in retro games it doesn't compare to me. If someone can show me data that proves otherwise, I'd love to see it. But when I go to price charting and I look at the price history of majority of games, there's one thing that all these games have in common. Their peak hits somewhere around 2020. All these games. I don't care which game you go to, which retro game you look at, for the majority of them, their value peaks in 2020, 2021. That's where it really hits its highest note. So, and that's on average, right? But like, again, if you look at most of them, that's where it's at. So for me, I like to use 2020 as a benchmark because that was the highest of the height. I mean, anything from that, anything happening from that point to me is a regression back to the mean. Not just only in terms of the price of the games, but also in terms of interest. We are regressing back to the mean. I do not think that today in 2025, we're seeing the same level of interest. We're seeing the same level of hype. We're seeing the same level of anything. And again, if someone has stats to show otherwise, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. But I haven't seen anything to tell me otherwise. And so what I noticed in 2025 is that now more than ever, they are just loosening the purse strings, or I guess they're opening the vault and they're giving us everything. Yesterday, I was able to get a copy of Chibi Robo and Eternal Darkness for the GameCube. Chibi Robo. I've never personally seen Chibi Robo on their website. Now, I don't know if it's going to come complete. I don't know if it's going to come disc only. Only time will tell. But I mean, who's to me it seems like all bets are off, and I could pull up their website and find anything. Who knows? You might go on websites, GameStop's website tomorrow, and find a copy of Little Samson for 150, or Misadventures of Tron for 250. Right now I feel like all bets are off and anything goes, and if they find any retro game in their vault, they're going to post it, which again is a great thing for collectors, because if you can find these games even at 25, 30, 40% off, if you're able to get these games at a steep discount from what you would have to pay at a mom and pop shop or on eBay, I think that's a win for a collector. But you guys let me know. Jump on their website. They've still got stuff up there. They've got stuff for the PlayStation, N64, Super Nintendo, Genesis. They've got all generations, random stuff up there. Let me know what you're seeing. Let me know what you think about this sudden flood of games. And I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.